Hello, everyone. It's me, Andrew. I'm here at Star Cottage Studio in Ligonier, Pennsylvania. So, yeah, it's been a day today, and yeah. So, if you didn't see, apparently somebody has reported my personal account, and either that or because of the Great Beat Extravaganza, they've flagged my messages as spam or a combination of the two or whatever. But they blocked my account from going live. So that has been a little bit problematic. Um, but luckily, William came in to save the day and he showed me a workaround. So hopefully, I don't completely lose all of the ability to go live for the business, because that would be extra terrible. Um, it's just really frustrating because, um, on Facebook and on Instagram and all of the social media platform, people can say pretty much whatever they want. And I've seen things that are directly hate speech, bullying. I've seen things where I've had family members over here where they've basically threatened their lives and spread malicious, terrible rumors about them, so much so that they ended up having to leave school, and they didn't take any of that down. But because I say thank you too much, I get reported. I don't know. So I'm a little bit frustrated, and it's probably best that I'm not going live, because I'm a little peeved, because it's already super challenging as a small business right now to stay afloat, with the pandemic and inflation and postal delays and all sorts of myriad of less than lovely things going on in the world right now. And they're just making it harder. And I don't know. Maybe somebody didn't like me for whatever reason and decided to report my account and get me blocked that way. Or maybe Facebook doesn't like me interacting with people that I don't already know and are friends with. So I don't know. Maybe it's one, maybe it's the other, or maybe it's a combination of the both. I don't actually know. I read in their policies about all of their community standards. I didn't post anything, at least to my knowledge, that broke those community standards. Maybe they don't like cat videos. I don't know. Maybe they don't like pictures of my cats. I'm curious, like, or they're like, oh, metal smithing stuff. We can't have that. I don't know. Whatever it is, it's not my favorite right now. So, on my personal page, I've gone through the process of trying to dispute this, and hopefully it will go back to normal. If not, then, maybe I just have lost connection to all of my personal friends out there and have lost content that I've been posting for since the beginning of Facebook, pretty much, back when it was just a social network for colleges. Um, and I was posting then. So, I mean, it's not like I'm a brand new account where it's like suspicious. I've had an account for, I don't know, 14, 6, however long Facebook's been around, I've had an account. So I don't know, super frustrating. I'm going to try to turn this all around, and yeah, we'll try to make something, and make me less crazy town, and hopefully I don't know. Anyways, I'm about how they call spitting mad. I see a couple people have tuned in. There's hi Sharon, Hi, Donna. Hi, Melanie. Oh, hi. Shakita, it's nice to see you. Hey, Cindy. Hey, Molly. Um, so I see Molly just got kicked out. So I don't know if that's because I'm on. I'm using the StreamYard as a workaround. So I don't know if how closely they are monitoring stuff. I don't know. Melanie says, I'm sorry that Facebook did that to you. I've never seen anything objective or objectionable on your Facebook. Well, I don't know. Maybe they don't like the look of my cats. Or they, I don't know. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this around and we can talk a little bit about some enameling things, and hopefully I won't get kicked off again or banned further. It would really, really suck if our Facebook got, if my Facebook got ruin, because this is one of the ways that I keep in touch with people. And over the years, I've kind of gravitated towards Facebook. And, I've made a lot of really wonderful friends and met a lot of people in the beading and creative community and locally that I would not have had the chance otherwise. And I'm just worried that if something happens to Facebook, or to my account, um, basically all of those connections that I've made over the decade plus time that I've had a Facebook account will be lost. And that's a real shame because even though I haven't met some of you all out there, um, I consider you friends, and this is the way that I keep in contact with my family and people who I have met over the years. So it's just a real shame that that this is even happening, because I literally see people in the ads. I see people showing their genitals and all kinds of stuff, which, cool, whatever, but apparently there's a community standard, and I broke the community standard somehow, and yet on the advertisements that they post and they promote and they put every 3 posts, you know I get to see Dong Patrol a bit over here, or Fancy Man Panties, which is fine. It's kind of funny. I'm like, what did I search that I had this come up? But, you know, I think it's a little bit hypocritical where they post things and they promote things that break their own community standard. And yet you have somebody who says, oh, thank you for your support. Thank you so much. Thank you for being a part of this. And I get blocked for being a spam. Cool. Isn't that nice? I just get, I just am a little bit frustrated because honestly, this is not the first time that they've done things like this where I had a, I, somebody wished me happy birthday too many times and I got in trouble. Is it my fault that I have more friends than the person down the street? I try to interact with them, but I get in trouble for interacting with them. So I'm confused. Do you want me to interact with them, or do you not want me to interact with them? Anyways, let me just turn this around before I get full on upset, because really, it's just super annoying. It's just super, super annoying that you have to go through all of these hoops. We advertise with them. We do all this stuff so that we are good participants of the community. We try to keep a positive, peaceful, encouraging, creative community, and we try to be welcoming and open to all. And yet this is what happens. All right. So, I see. Yeah, so anyways, let me flip this around. I don't actually know how to do this. I think William walked me through a quick tutorial. You're gonna see the ceiling. You can see where I painted part of it and where I didn't paint part of it. Okay. So let me zoom in and adjust the angle a little bit. It's a little bit wonkadoodle. All right. So if you saw Williams live yesterday, you might have seen some of the things that we started working on during the Great Beat Extravaganza over the weekend. Um, we made these cool pendants. Um, I hand cut these all out and sanded them down and shaped them and filed them and made them like this. And this is the first coat of enamel on the front. And this is the back, which I stamped them out also with our AG and the little eye. So, um, yeah. So this is the first stage, and I really like the speckling that happened, which is kind of an orange peel effect. It's one of those things like enameling is such a, it's a it's a precise science, but there's also an art form to it, and you can do everything exactly the same every time, and sometimes things will be a little bit different. So you never know what's going to happen, and I think that's a little bit of the fun of it because it's like a surprise. I'm always interested to see what happens when I pull something out of the kiln. It's just like, it's almost like Christmas and you see what you see and that's hopefully it works out. Sometimes you're pleasantly surprised, sometimes you're disappointed, but I kind of feel like with experimentations with enamel, I don't have too much writing on them, and what I mean by that is that I'm still in the kind of learning and growing process of my enamel journey. So if something doesn't work out, I try to be more forgiving and with myself and remind myself that you have to have those failures so that you can learn and so that you can grow, and hopefully you'll walk away with something more valuable than if you just had a perfect piece to begin with. So anyways, this is the first one. I like the speckled look, but that's what. But I also wanted the color to be a little bit more intense on these. So we did is we added a layer of opalescent blue on top, and I am a smitten kitten, y'all. This is the real deal. I'm in it to win it with this one. I am just head over heels in love with the way these turned out. It just brings out that blue just a hint more. It kept the speckles. I like this, but this is, I like it. Anyway, so I I think these just turned out wonderfully. All right, so I've got these, and I was originally gonna paint on them, and I did some painting experiments on them, but I don't know. I kind of like them just the way they are. These are pretty cool. Let me try to angle this so you can actually see. All right, so Yeah, I was gonna paint on them, but I don't know. I kind of like them the way they are. Um, so we'll see. I'll show you what some of the experimentations I did with the other pieces. So hold on one moment. So there's a product that you can use. It's called an overglazed black for fine line overglazed black. And basically, what it is enamel that has been mixed with a binder, and you can use it almost like paint. I used it to create this. Um, and I put this on top of the kiln to dry it out. Unfortunately, it got a little bit smeary in some places and it kind of ran in other places, which is not exactly what I was looking for. But I dried it out, so hopefully, when I put this in, it will stay kind of true to this. But we'll see. Um, and so I had this is before it's been fired. And once it's put in the kiln for a couple of minutes, it should fuse with the enamel on the surface, and the black will be a little bit shiny. I did an experiment, and there's a couple things that I experimented with in this one. And for one, it was to paint the image of the bird, which it kind of we had to repeat fire this several different times, so it kind of spread a little bit, which is not ideal. In some ways, I like it because it's kind of like kind of a halo-y kind of effect. I had to add a couple different layers to build it up, and I probably could have let it dry out a little bit more before I put it in the kiln. The moon, I did a couple different things. So one of the things I did was I added a little piece of opalescent glass, and I can show you what the opalescent glass looks like. It's pretty neat. Actually, let me. I'm trying to do this one-handed. Help me, William. Help me. He just came with coffee because he sensed the danger in the forest. He said he needs. I said, you know what? I haven't drunk very much in since William started taking medication because he can't drink alcohol, and so I don't really drink alcohol anymore. But I was like, go get the wine, William. Go to the gas station and get the big one. Facebook don't make my. Okay, I'm not gonna say bad words. Y'all know I say bad words when I'm not on the TV time. Um, but I try not to say them on the TV time because I'm trying to, be a part of the community standard that apparently I break all the time. But anyway, so here you go. Whoa. Wouldn't that be fun to throw at somebody's face right now? No, I'm being devilhead. Sorry. Sorry, Facebook. I didn't mean it. That wasn't a threat of violence, I promise. All right. So, anyways, so this is some pretty stuff. When you put it in the kiln, it actually balls up on itself, so it's not all janky and jagged. It actually turns into a little ball of fun. And so one of the things we did was we put it here, and it kind of had a separation enamel effect, which is where the under layers of enamel or the top layers of enamel are pushed away, and it's kind of like a displacement. So the glass that's in this shard, once it melted, it pushed the top layer away. So that's how you get that kind of light effect around the side. And then I decided that I wanted to experiment with this paint. It's an enamel. It's an enamel paint, but it's an acrylic body enamel. So basically, they take it has the same kind of consistency and feel as enamel. Um, and I really want to play around with that because if you didn't know, I went to school for painting. So I kind of want to, you know, play around with that. If you go to my Instagram, hopefully that's still around. Who knows? If you go to my Instagram, you can see a bunch of my tiny, small scale paintings. I think a bunch of you out there have a lot of them, so thank you. I really appreciate it. I probably shouldn't thank too much just in case, you know, I don't want to come across as spam. You can tell I'm a little bit salty still. I probably will have to have the wine and the coffee so that the salt level in my blood is diminished. Um, anyways, hopefully y'all are thinking this is funny because I'm trying to be funny, even though in my mind I have the fire starter powder power, and it's getting hot. It's like it's cooking, you know, like you know there. I know it's gonna be. I'm gonna unlock my mutant gene of fire starter, and they're gonna call me the enameler. I don't know. Maybe, who knows? You know, like they in the comic books, like in X-Men, they have like the trauma time, and it makes them like their powers like manifest. Like mine are a little bit like latent tendency. You think they'd have developed much earlier, you know, but like Magneto, he had like the Holocaust and stuff, and like me, I just get like banned by Facebook, and then all of a sudden I'm like shooting fire out of my eyes. Um, so hopefully, you know, whatever. At least I can do like party tricks or something. I don't know. So here you go. So I added that kind of that acrylic enamel along the sides of this piece because originally it kind of had this look. And then I did the overglaze, which I showed you. Hopefully I don't smear that off. And then I did the opalescent there, and then I did the enamel on top. We to try to protect the surface, we put some clear on top of this, and we got the low fusing clear. And I don't know if that was the right decision or not because it started to break up the surface of the enamel and kind of making it a little bit choppier. It used to be before we put that on there, it was a little bit of a tighter, a little bit of a more detail and less feathering out with the spreading. So I don't know if that was a good idea or not. I'm guessing not. But you know, that's a cool thing that we can maybe use in a different kind of effect. So we'll see. So that's one thing that we worked on last night. And then William, we got a bunch of Pantone colors. We wanted to make some very Perry Pantone colors. So we've been experimenting with which color to use. So there's this one, which is a test sample. I see a couple people are tuning in or saying things. Valerie says, love the colors. That black speckled look is so deep and saturated with the blue, just brings everything together. Such a yummy combination. Well, thank you, Valerie. Valerie says, boy, I wish I had access to a kiln. Yeah, so we saved up to get our kiln. I actually, when a long time ago, when I got my original kiln, I had all my silver scrap from when I was doing PMC. And at the time, the price of silver went ridiculous. It went super high. It was like $50 a troy ounce. So I turned in all of my silver scrap to Rio. And if you get, this has changed now, but it used to be if you sent your silver scraps in for refining, you would either get a partial return for what you sent, they'd send you a check, or you'd get more if you just took a credit and used it on stuff from their store. So I got a kiln, and that's what we use for my ceramic stuff. And hopefully we'll get William's wheel set up and we'll make some little pots, because that kiln is super tiny. It's like micro mini size. So we're going to be making one thing at a time. It's going to be like doll. It's going to be like the doll furniture up in here. Be making tiny teacups. There you go, William. Your new business name, Tiny Teacups. So here's one color. And then here's another. And I'm trying to make this go in the hole, aka be on camera and not be off camera. And then here's another one. And here's another one. So these are all different shades of purple. And these are the opaques. And they are the closest that we came to it. We tried to do an enamel that was transparent, but unfortunately, I'll show you how they turned out. Which they might look better on an opaque color underneath, but so far we got some raspberry, some Merlot, some Shiraz, and some Cabernet Sauvignon. Maybe this one's Pinot Noir. It's pretty dark. Those aren't the colors, actually, but this is supposed to be periwinkle. It's not. This one is supposed to be dark lavender. And this one is supposed to be savor purple. Maybe I'll pronounce it Savoir purple. That sounds fancy. And this is passion purple. So I think you might have to have a lighter base coat underneath so that they pop. But on the raw copper, they go more of like a burgundy color. And if you don't know this about copper, if you heat it up with a torch, there's a lot of things that can happen. If you heat it up too much, bless you. If you heat it up too much, there's a thing called fire scale that can happen. And fire scale is when it turns black. But there are different ways that you can oxidize and patina the surface. If you take hot water with a little bit of salt in it, you can when you quench the metal, you can get a kind of a rosy red glow to the copper. And it's a super durable fire, I call it flame polish patina, and it's like a red rosy kind of color. And so anyway, so when you heat up the metal, that's happening under the surface of the glass, and because it's a clear, transparent kind of dealio, you can see that happening underneath it, which is causing it to be much more red than not. So we have to keep experimenting to find the perfect, very Perry color. But you have to try it before you can before you know. So those were those experiments last night. I'm trying to grab stuff with it while it's there. And also, Valerie, if you don't have access to a kiln, you can also torch fire. It's a little bit of a different process, but there's a lot of different things you can do, and you can actually do it fairly inexpensively. There's a wonderful artist named Barbara Lewis. She wrote a book called Torch Fire Enamel. It's a wonderful technique that she does. It's an immersion technique, and from there, she has other techniques to build on that. There's also a wonderful book by Stephen James. It's called something enameling with a torch. I don't know. Um, you know what? We can find out. The books is literally behind me. Um, this is the one that Barbara Lewis wrote. I took a workshop with Barbara Lewis in Tucson, probably. Oh, when was that, William? 10 years ago? We were living in the apartment.
At least 5 years then.
We've lived in the house for at least 7. So at least 7, probably most closer to 10 because we just moved here. And I was making these little cookbooks of different enamel combinations. I still have that somewhere. I'll have to find it. Anyway, so there's that one. And then here's the one that Stephen James wrote. So if you don't have access to a kiln, it's not the end of the world. You could probably get everything that you need for less than $100. The torches, you do have to use a bigger torch. With Barbara Lewis's technique, she uses map gas, which is sometimes not easy to find depending on where you are. And then with some of the other ones, you just need a bigger torch. But those are relatively inexpensive compared to a kiln. All right. And one thing that I also recommend, if you do go to any of the big shows, not that they really have those anymore, sometimes if you like hang out around at the end of the classes, they'll have their kilns on sale because they will ship stuff out to the classes, but they don't necessarily want to ship it back. So sometimes they'll sell those kilns on a discount. So one of my friends, they ended up getting an amazing deal on a bunch of tools. They got an oxygen concentrator, they got a kiln, they loaded up. Unfortunately, I was flying and I'd already spent all my money on beads, but if I hadn't, I mean, I could have, leveled up a long time ago. Catherine said maybe it was the outhouse talk on Saturday. You know what? I talk about the outhouse like all the time. It's like, it's hard to even go through a Facebook Live with me without me talking about the poop hole. So maybe they just got too many. They have that somebody got sensitive. They said, "Oh no, my sensitive ears." He said the word poop. Oh my. And then reported me, maybe. I don't know. All right. I see people saying that my piece is gorgeous and stunning. Thank you so much. Diane is trying not to choke to death. Somebody said they love the blues. They love the purples. There's some yum. Then there's somebody said they're gonna have a glass. I don't know who you are because it says Facebook user. Renee says copper's tricky to work with. It is, but it isn't. I mean, once you work with it, you get to know the different properties of it, and you can really manipulate it. One of the things that I've been doing, and this is kind of like totally left field if you're like, what is he doing? Because a lot of my stuff is very like figurative, and a lot of my stuff is very narrative. And there was a time in college where I experimented with abstraction, and college is the time for experimentation. And I learned a lot from it, and you'll see some of those things pop up sometimes. But my heart is in that kind of dream time talk. So in the magical realism. So yeah. Anyway, so what I was saying was, out of left field, which doesn't seem connected to anything. I've been studying up on different ways of working and manipulating the metal. And a lot of times those manipulations are very abstract. And I'll actually show you the books that I've been reading so that you can play along too if you want. The books are a little bit pricey. But there are things on YouTube and on that you can find around that kind of encapsulates these ideas without being quite so pricey. The books are well worth it though, so don't get me wrong when I say that. I just know that like I had to save up for these books because these books were like 40 or $50 a piece, and you know. It's just enough for me that I have to kind of pause about it. Um, this is so heavy. Can you get that fold forming book out, William? It's in that pile. It's called Fold Forming. So one of the books that I've been interested in lately is Creative Metal Forming. This is written by Betty Longy and Cynthia. I don't know how to say it. I think it's Ide, but I'm not sure. I just saw her do a presentation through the Silveris School, which was pretty neat. The other book that I've been looking at lately is Fold Forming, and this is by Charles Luton Brain. And he kind of invented fold forming. And then the creative metal forming, they had a teacher named Heki Sepa who also made a book. I don't have that book yet, but I want it. And it is about metal forming. And they kind of took those ideas of the synclastic and anticlastic forms and worked with those. With Charles Luton Brain, he has it's really fascinating the way that he approaches metal, because he doesn't do it in a way that is bound by tradition. In one of the chapters in the books, he actually talks about this, where the tradition is useful for preserving knowledge, but it also can hold people back because, sometimes things get codified that were things that were needed in the moment, but not necessarily things that, um, you know, are long lasting. And this is like a completely, not related, but it's kind of like in the Bible when they talk about not eating pork. Back in the olden times, if you ate the pork and you didn't cook it, you get the trichinosis and then you die. So when they start talking about like unclean beasts and stuff like that, back then, before they had like modern technology and stuff, um, it made sense why that was a rule. But now it's not necessarily a rule. You don't necessarily have to do that to be, if you're kosher, then you don't eat pork or whatever. But we're vegetarians, so that doesn't matter anyways. But it's kind of like that. So if you understand the processes, you can take those processes and apply them to your metalsmithing and manipulate the metal in different ways. And basically, if you can anneal the metal and heat it up so that it's supple and soft, and then play around with it, you can get all kinds of different effects. And he talks about the different folds that you can make with the metal. I see a couple people. Valerie says that she has a torch and now she's getting excited. I am excited for you. I think it's really cool. With a torch, you are limited by the size of the pieces that you can do. So when you're doing the enameling, make sure you work on small sizes because if you do anything that's too large, you're going to have not the greatest success. And then you're going to be like, Andrew lied to me. Why he got to lie to me? I'm a fire start him. So just be mindful of that. Susan said, this is very exciting. I got my kiln right before the hike in PMC as well. Enameling looks more affordable, maybe. Maybe. I mean, we're in the hunter-gatherer phase right now. So, it's to do the kind of setup of it all is a little bit pricey. But I think you can work very affordably. You can get materials from the hardware store. You can get metal sheeting, copper sheeting that they use to clad houses and do soffits and stuff, and use that. You can use copper mesh and all kinds of things that are unconventional materials that you can get really affordably. So in that way, you can save money that way. With like PMC, you can also use PMC in your enameling. So don't file that out of your mind completely because there are ways of using that. Yeah, there's actually this really amazing artist who is out of Japan, and he does this amazing kind of sawing work with that are kind of these super gothic baroque kind of overly ornate frames that he pierces out with a handsaw, and then instead of using enamel, he uses fine silver powder, the same stuff that they use to make the precious metal clay. And then he uses that instead of enamel. And it gets this really cool kind of slightly granulated surface. It's not quite like granulation because granulation is like little balls of metal that are stuck on, but it's almost like a sugary effect, but it's all silver, which is pretty cool. So that's a technique that kind of cross pollinates and dips its toe in this and dips its toe in that. I'm going to take a sip of my beverage. It's actually coffee. It's not the wine. I don't think William got it, but maybe we're gonna. He shook his head no. So we'll
You need it by the end.
we'll stop on the way back.
Just gotta get down there before they stop selling it.
When we moved to Pennsylvania, they did not sell alcohol in convenience stores or grocery stores. So if you wanted like a 6-pack, you had to buy it from the bar, but you had to pay bar prices, and you'd be like, "What?" But then you could go to the state store, and the state stores were only open certain hours of the day and on certain days of the week, and you had to know the secret handshake and all that business. Um, so Yeah, but back to the affordability of enamel. I think it is going to be more affordable, but I'm like, I need all the colors, y'all. So that's where it kind of gets a little bit pricey. And I'm like, I need this tool and I need this tool. And in reality, you don't need uh, all the bells and all the whistles and all the things. I'm like, I need that titanium spatula, even though I just made this perfectly fine and serviceable and more than serviceable. It's amazing. This is William loves it above all other
I do. I
tools.
love that spatula, actually.
That spatula that I made with my heart and love. I almost lost an eye, but luckily I was wearing eye protection. The big blue, like on that TV show, pretty much exploded in my face, and there was metal that shot at my face. I'm making it sound really dramatic, and it kind of was a little bit, but luckily I kept my cool and didn't like scream and then have like oil shoot in my mouth. Um, but yeah, so and they're like, well, when you have a machine that's basically rattling itself apart every time it strikes, eventually one of these days it's gonna come apart. And I think the teacher may have pooped his pants a little bit, but if he did, he didn't tell anybody, and we were all too polite not to ask. So yeah, so Suzanne says reading more nonfiction, and they are not inexpensive. Your realism is what makes you so wonderful. Thank you. Marion says can't live without pork. I used to say that too. And one of our going away parties was actually pork themed. I made pork everything. So we had these little sliders that was slow cooked pork with a red cabbage slaw and jalapeno peppers on these tiny little ciabatta rolls with just a little smear of mustard, and those were delightful. And even the dessert had pork in it because we had bacon kind of crumbled up, and it's pretty much because when I was growing up, my mom is from the Philippines, and that's like their national dish. So pork is what's for dinner if you're in the Filipino household usually. Um, but so, and then it was funny. We were in San Francisco not too long ago, and we went down to Daly City, and there was a Filipino restaurant, and I asked, I said, "What do you have that's vegetarian?" And she kind of looked confused for a second, and then she was like, "Well, there's rice, and we have water."
We sold out of kits.
Oh, good. William said that we sold out of kits. Hallelujah. Maybe I won't have to be so dependent on Facebook. Anyways, Melanie says, "Oh, or go over the bridge to New Jersey." That's what I did when I lived in PA. Yeah, you know what? People getting clever to get the workaround for that. Like I had people who would drive to Ohio and they would like stock up. And I was like, aren't you afraid that like if you get hit by a car, you're gonna like blow up in this ball of fire? And luckily that never happened. But anyways, all right. So I'm gonna talk a little bit more about some experimentations in enamel, and if people want, maybe we'll make something, and I'll show you how to get started. Because I don't have anything prepared. But the kiln is the temperature after Facebook decided to hate on me. So I guess that's one perk of it. Because the kiln does take a while to ramp up. So yeah. Anyway, so one of the things that why I brought those books out is because I think that it's so important to push yourself creatively. Um, and to try new things, especially things that will build your relationship to a material better. Sometimes there's exercises. in these creativity books and stuff, and they're like, you should do this, 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 and this, and you're like, why? This doesn't have anything to do with what I'm doing. And sometimes it's good to step out of your comfort zone and do something that's a little bit different. And then you can kind of understand things a little bit different. And so I'm excited. All right. So what else did we have that we did? I thought we did other experiments. Hey, I'll show you the failures. How about that? So that you all don't think that it's like all the time golden child up in here. All right. So this is one of the ones that I tried to do, but for some reason the enamel didn't stick. So there you go, peekaboo. That's not desirable. Here's another one that did that. And I think what it was is that sometimes we were pickling things to clean it. And sometimes the pickle was like, I don't want to be your friend. And it was making the enamel react kind of funny. And so some of the pieces did not turn out right and didn't get a full fusing. Some of them, like this one, is pretty close, but along the edges are pretty rough. So we'll have to go back over and clean them up with what's called an alundum stone. It's basically a kind of a compressed stone that's like a file that you have to use under running water so it doesn't go up your nose hole and make the bloody booger time. But you use that to grind down. It's like a grinding stone for your enamel. So some of these they're close, but I have to finish the edges with an alundum stone. And then if needed, if there's big chunks kind of missing, we can patch those in with some either wet packed enamel, which is really good if you're going to do something that needs to be in like a spot that doesn't move. Sometimes it's hard to control the enamel when it's a powder. So if you mix it with distilled water, you can kind of control it a little bit better. But it's kind of like working with like painting with sand, like with wet sand, if you ever have tried that. So it's a little bit tricky, but it's some enamelists, that's what they prefer, especially artists that work with cloisonne. They exclusively wet pack and they don't do any sifting at all. So it just is up to the artist and what they're doing and the process that they're working with. It also does not help if you drop them. But luckily it's sturdy enough that it didn't pop off completely, so I guess that's good. I see Diane say, this has nothing to do with the conversation, but the next GBE starts on my birthday, April 8th. So going to start saving to treat myself. Well, happy early birthday. Melanie says, can you show with a torch? I don't really have it set up. But I mean, we could maybe next time we can do that. I got the torch working. If you were watching the live, I've never dropped my torch face first in water. But for the live presentation I did, so it finally dried out and I was able to ignite it again. But I'll need to kind of set that up with a tripod and get that kind of going. But in theory, I can show that maybe next week. Diane says, have you looked at thrift books? It's basically an online thrift store for books. Sometimes you can find things on the cheap there. Of course. I know thrift books. I know Discover books. I know Alibris. I know all the places to find all the cheap books. It's like the underground railroad of cheap books up in here. Otherwise, my half my library was attained that way. Um, Melanie asks, "Can you refire them?" Yes, and sometimes you have to. You have to. You just simply have to build up the layers, one firing at a time. So sometimes a piece can be in the kiln 10 times. You know, it just all depends on what you're doing and what you're trying to achieve. Like I did a cloisonne piece of this bird, and it was pretty big, and I had to fill it. Like I was like, I don't know what I was thinking. I thought, oh, it'll be so much easier if I work bigger. You know what? That's not always true, because then you are wet packing and you're using tons of enamel. I've never used that much enamel on one piece. It was like, it was not how you call petite. So, and then of course, the last firing, I overfired it by a minute, and there was disappointment. But I got distracted. I was like, oh, I need to put this in the kiln. And then I was starting to clean up, and then I forgot it was in the kiln. And then when I remembered, some of the cloisons kind of collapsed, and some of the colors bled. And I was like, well, up until now, it would look pretty good, but now it looks less than good. But that's how you learn, I guess. Um, Teresa says, "Would you sell the ones that failed?" No, because then people would be like, he cut me," and then so, yeah, no, like that. They're just not that good. They're not a complete loss. I can chip away this. Um, and basically take a hammer to it and knock all the enamel off and redo it. The backs turned out great. I'm like, whoa! I don't know what happened, but they're like the backs. That's where it's at, y'all. Let me show this closer. Those are so nice. I was like, how come this is so nice? How come you're not nice on the front? Well, oh wow. So, yeah, we won't sell these, but they're not a complete loss. I mean, I will look at them disdainfully and scornfully for a while, but eventually, I'll chip away the surface and start all over again. Um, which is, it sounds hard, but it's not that. There's another way of doing it where you heat it up in the kiln and then you have a bowl of cold water, and when you dunk it in, the thermal shock makes the glass explode off of the piece. You got to wear eyeglasses or safety gear, because otherwise you're going to have the blind time, and then that's, you know, not always fun. So, you know, uh, there's that. But, anyways, um, it's always good to have safety, even, like I used to play kind of fast and loose with safety rules, and then stuff happened, and then you're like, oh, now I know why they said put that eyeglasses on, because you don't wear the eyeglasses, and then you have a bolt shoved in your eye, and then the sadness. So this is one of those things that's where it's almost deceptively simple, and it's easy to forget to do those simple safety rules. But like whenever we're working, we wear masks, and we're super careful about what we touch, and how we touch it. So that sounds really weird and not so delightful. So I'm going to move on. Anyway, so the next thing. Um, Melanie asks, where do you purchase enamel? So there's a lot of places actually. So one of the major enamel manufacturers in this country is based out of Kentucky. It's called Thompson Enamels. If you're looking for certain enamels, it just depends who you like. Like in the early days, I bought a lot of my enamel from Barbara Lewis because she's the one who taught me how to torch fire enamel. So I wanted to support her, and so I got a bunch of enamels from her. You can buy Thompson enamels from Rio. You can buy them from, there's a place here in Pennsylvania outside of Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania called Enamel Warehouse, which is not too far from us, about maybe a little under 2 hours. And so they sell almost all the colors of Thompson enamels. Um, there's a lot of places that you can. There is an artist that I follow on Instagram and on Facebook and all over the place, even her Patreon account. And her name is Almagro. And she is, I believe, in Belgium. I may be making that somewhere in the Netherlands, somewhere in Europe. And she works with leaded enamels, which are different than the unleaded enamels. And some people, they only work with leaded enamels. And at first, when I heard the word leaded enamels, I was like, oh no, I don't want to get the brain cancer. And so I was very hesitant to even broach the subject of it. But if you work with it in a conscientious way, you have to be really careful. Um, but if you work with it in a conscientious way, you can get some really amazing effects and it's fairly safe. Now, if you start sticking the brushes in your mouth and doing stuff and like snorting lines of leaded enamels, of course, you're going to have issues. You shouldn't do that with unleaded enamels. It's powdered glass. Don't eat the powdered glass. That, a no brainer. Don't snort the powdered glass. Um, but, so you can use leaded enamels. They're a little bit harder to find, but there are places that you can that in Europe and in Japan that sells them. And really, it's up to you to kind of figure out what colors and effects you want to get. So you have to do a lot of experimentation. One thing I will say is that they're not always compatible. So it can cause these little what's called crazing and all these little tiny little miniature cracks. So you kind of have to be mindful of that. So you can't like mix and match all the time. Let's see. Pam's joined us. Hi, Pam. Melanie says, that sounds great. I'm glad your torch is working after the GBE. I was watching you. Oh, good. Yeah, I was nervous. I mean, I've used that torch to make literally thousands of pieces. So if it died, it wouldn't, it wouldn't be the greatest of losses. I'm glad it didn't, and I'm glad I can still use it for a long time. But it's one of those things that if it, it wouldn't be it. I already got my money's worth out of it, is what I'm trying to say. Terry says, "Oh, you found the key and unlocked Facebook." Actually, I did not find the key and I did not unlock Facebook, but I know William's like, "Oh no, settle down." You get him fired up, he's gonna start cursing, and then he for real is gonna get banned from the Facebook. No, we found a workaround using StreamYard, so hopefully they don't watch this and then them say, "Oh." So we'll see. Um, So I see a couple people. Pam says, when you get frustrated with something, that's a good time to chip away. I don't know. Like when I get mad, I get like the devil head and I start like hammering stuff. Like I was taking this one class, and if they're watching, I apologize, whatever. But we were in this one class, and there's these stakes that you have to use to make the bowls, and you have to use that one stake. You can't move, you can't change the stake, because if you change the stake, then it changes the shape of your bowl. So I had been working all day on this one bowl. I had planted my behind. I get up for 2 seconds to go to the bathroom, and this one dude jumps in and he plants himself, and I was just about to finish the bowl. And so I was like, oh, I need to use that steak because I've been using it all day and you haven't, and so you're changing the entire shape of your bowl and basically starting from scratch. I even like draped something across it. I should have put like took my underwear off and like piled it on top so that nobody would touch it. But it's a communal space and I doubt they would appreciate that. But I draped my apron over it, and still, that dude, he picked it up and he went to town. And I was like, dude. And then the thing about these steaks is they're handmade, and there's only like, they're so you have to basically start over from scratch. And then so I was hammering on this metal, which you think would be a stress reliever, but I just started hammering it harder. And so then I busted through the metal. So that is a lesson in maybe don't do that, or maybe do, I don't know, maybe don't do something that requires patience and practice, and kind of a mindful kind of headspace, because otherwise then you end up with a crack in your bowl. Melanie says, I'm always so crazed by the number of people that complain about the handmade pieces they purchase. I love when my item is unique and special. Me too. I mean, it's one thing if something is like super defective and you're like going to get hurt by it. But I feel like those little details are kind of like the artist's hallmark. And, like these, they're speckled. Those speckles aren't intentional. Those are all a part of the process. We can work on getting rid of them, but I love them. Like I would rather have these be kind of speckled and be not perfect, and have all that character than just be plain. I mean, plain is fine too, but I kind of like that. I guess it's because there's a Japanese philosophy. It's called wabi sabi, and it's kind of embracing the imperfect as perfect. In Japan, there's a lot of kind of design aesthetics that kind of embrace those human touches. There's a book, and I want to say it's by Junichiro Tanizaki, and it's called "In Praise of Shadows." And you have to take, if you read that book, I'm gonna tell you this: take it with a grain of salt and realize that it was at a time, it was written at a time that was less than how you say PC now. Because he says some stuff and you're like, is that racist? I don't know. But anyway, but the majority of the book is pretty good, and it talks about kind of how there's a different kind of mentality between Japanese culture and with AKA or uh, Western culture. And the reason why I put that in the quotation marks is because, like, uh, saying that it's Western culture, it kind of means that Europe is in the center, and that kind of talking is different now. But like American culture and like European culture, it's different than that. And what he was saying is like, for instance, he talks about the poop hole. So he says that like in Japan, at least in the time that this was written, it was there's like the bathrooms were paneled with wood that was kind of worn down and kind of rustic, kind of like the cottage. And when he went into the American bathrooms, they were like white tile and super cold and super sterile. And it does something where like the shadowy kind of warmth has a different psychological effect on you than being kind of like the dirty thing in the super sterile room. Which I was like, don't you want your bathroom to be clean? But whatever. But it is a cool book. Anyways, there is another technique that's called how do you say it, William? That kitsuge? Is that how you say it? Kitsuge? I could be making up that pronunciation, but basically, um, kitsugi. So it's where people will have a break in something and they will use gold with a resin to fill in those cracks or those breaks. And it almost elevates that object and it makes it even more special because it has been broken and was rescued and survived. Um, and they honor that history by using gold. So it's just a different kind of mentality. But anyways, Melanie says I was looking recently and had trouble finding places. So thank you so much. Yeah, it's hard because enamel is a word that's used a lot and it doesn't always mean the same thing. So it's kind of like solder. Like solder, there's soft solder and there's which is different than torch soldering. So soft soldering is the one that you use with a soldering iron that you do with like stained glass, and torch soldering is using a torch to melt the metal. And to make it even more confusing, there are different levels of solder, and one of the levels of solder is soft solder. So there you go. I would probably call it something else. I don't know what they call it. Iron melting. I don't know. Something different so people don't get confused. But like, so when if you're looking for enamels, they sell soft enamels, which is basically resin, and so it's a completely different process. So there's also enamel paints, but they're like tester enamels, which is a super stinky paint that is like used on metal for like automotive kind of models, which is pretty cool in itself. It's basically like a fancy nail polish. But there is also there are paints that are enamel paints where the paint is made up of enamel powders, which is glass that's been ground down and mixed with a binder. So with enamel, the acrylic enamels, those are the ones mixed with an acrylic binder. So you get kind of textural, kind of painterly effects that way. And then there's also ones where they mix it with gum arabic. And so that gets a watercolor effect, which are it just depends what you like. So yeah. So it is sometimes tricky when you're looking for something and you can't find what you need, and you get something and then you think it's one thing, but it's actually another thing. But there is like an enameling powder that's not even glass. It's like plastic. and it's basically embossing powder, but it was named that way to kind of, I don't know, change it or diversify it from embossing powder. But anyways, so I see a lot of people um, commenting, and so the specs aren't necessarily. Teresa Sill said that she loves the failed ones, that she loves the speckles. I don't necessarily consider those fails. I think that those are kind of like the byproducts of the process. I did want to take these and do things with them, but I like them so much the way they are. We probably will sell them just the way they are. I added a coating, or well, I actually have had William. He's been on fire with enamel lately. He added the opal blue on top of it, and you can see the difference here of the two. This is a little bit more greeny blue, and this is more of a blue, a little bit more of like a cobalty blue on top. I do like this. It's kind of a neat texture, but I wanted to enhance that blue. So that's that. If you didn't see earlier, that's what I was intending to do to them, but I think I'm going to leave them plain. Either that or do some more tests, and we'll see. Melanie says, I agree, Andrew. I feel there are no bad mistakes when making jewelry. They make the item special. Yes and no. Um, I think there are things that you can do that can make things. Basically, if it doesn't hurt somebody, I'm okay with it. But like sometimes there are things that you can do to your jewelry that can hurt people, and or destroy their clothes and stuff like that. And that's not necessarily the most wonderful thing. So if you know, but as far as like the rules of like color and composition and different things like that and different materials and mixing that, I say have at it, go wild. As my friend says, go bananas. Um, and as long as it's durable and it kind of is reflective of your spirit and authenticity and different things like that, then I think you're fine. Um, I see a couple different people talking about the kintsugi, kintsugi.
Kintsugi.
Yeah, so there you go. One thing that we did, if you watched my reels lately on Andrew T. Thornton 100, if that's still there, you can go and see how we made these. I use the hydraulic press to press these out. And I actually showed William how to do it. My goal is to show all these different people how to do it, so then I can just like supervise. Isn't that a good idea? He just made a face. But you know what? So there, like for instance, like there's a lot of stuff that's some boring stuff. Like sanding the metal down, boring. I don't care if you got the book on tape. You got like I had a book on tape, and it was like I was going into a trance. Like I was sitting there rocking back and forth, sanding the metal down. I then went into a trance. Um, and so yeah, I just think it's not necessarily where if I take the time that I spent doing things that I don't really necessarily have to do, like all the prep work, I could better spend that time doing the stuff that only I can do. If that makes any sense. So with having help from like William and other people, it will allow me to be a little bit more creative and not get kind of stuck in the doldrums of having to do some of the less exciting stuff that You don't necessarily need that one specific person to do it, so that you don't need their DNA at every single level of the process. But anyway, so we use a hydraulic press to press these out, and these are copper, and I'm over here fingering the tops of them and touching them like crazy. But you shouldn't do that because you're imparting your oils on your skin to the metal, and then you end up with pieces like this probably. So we're not going to do that. But anyway, so we use a hydraulic press to press those out. And if you watch my reels on my Instagram, you can see how we did that. I've been practicing my voiceovers, y'all. Let me just tell you, I'm not like the young people who do on the TikTok and they can just do it in one take. I'm over here like, hello everyone. And I have to practice over and over. And William probably thinks that I'm like starting a cult in our basement, chanting these same things over and over. I got this like perfect take, and then Gilbert started meowing in the background, and I was like, well, that didn't work out. So I had to redo it and I had to hide. And of course, if you've ever tried to hide from a cat, they will want to find you. At least my cats do, because they love me and they want to spend time with me. They want to spend quality time with me. So I hid, and then they found me and started scratching like wild, like I was being held captive by the mountain troll or whatever, the boogeyman, whatever's got me. And he was so concerned, and he was scratching, scratching, scratching. I was like, I guess that's take 57. I'm going to be hoarse by the end of this. But then I learned that you can actually stop and take a breath. So you don't have to do it all in one go. I was like all surprised that they actually accounted for people to breathe. So anyways, that's a work in progress. I don't actually know if I'm going to be able to do that. It doesn't come really intuitively to me, but we'll see. I'll just keep adding them. Probably only like 4 people saw them. And after Facebook has banned me, who knows what? They probably nobody sees them now. Just 12 years of posts disappear into smoke. I heard some kind of something.
Maybe it's rain.
He said maybe it's rain. A creature. Great. All right, let's see. I see a couple different people. Somebody says, can I repeat my Instagram channel name, please? Yes, my name, Andrew T. Thornton. That's THORNTON 100. And the reason why I picked 100, people are like, why'd you add 100? It's like, because that's the best you could get on the test. When I know that's stupid, but oh well. It wasn't taken. There's apparently a lot of people named Andrew Thornton, and not all of them are of the reputable sort. There's one dude whose name was Andrew Thornton who died from drinking too much water. There's another one that got in trouble by smuggling drugs in a bear. And then there's another one who owned a grocery store line that they sold squirrel meat. So yeah, there's a lot of Andrew Thorntons, and if you're watching, I'm sorry. Y'all had to make choices in life, and maybe I can't, I don't understand those choices, and if I was in your position, I'd make those same choices. I don't know. But anyways, there's a lot of us out there, and a lot of them snagged up some of them prime names early. So that's how that got to be. Lisa says, do you use something like Steams with a light grading wheel for them? I'm guessing that's sanding wheel. So If you need to, when you're enameling, you use what's called a trivet, and a trivet. William, can you bring over the trivet? This is a trivet that you can put a lot of pieces on. So the trivet, if you're not careful, what ends up happening is the glass melts, and this is metal, and it doesn't melt. So sometimes the glass will melt around the pieces. So there'll be little marks, which are called trivet marks. Those are not the end of the world. They're actually super common and something that you have to face all the time, and you just have to live with it. Luckily, I've been taking enough workshops that I've been kind of gleaning little hints and tips and tricks from every person that I take a class with. And then I combine them to make this one monster philosophy. And that one monster philosophy has, I think, produced some pretty good results. And what I mean by pretty good results is when I first started taking enameling classes, they were just like, well, they're just a fact of life. Get over it. And so we were scrubbing the pieces with a Lundum stone, and that's what we had to do. But then I took a workshop, and they said, you know what? If you sand or if you file down your edges, there's less surface area for the metal to stick to the glass. So I did that. Then I went and took another workshop, and they said, you know what? If you use a little piece of chalk, that will prevent that from sticking. And so I did that. And then I took another workshop, and they said, you know what? I took a class in fusing glass, and they use a product called boron nitrate, and it doesn't stick at all if you use the boron nitrate. So I put all of these philosophies together and made one solid kind of thing where I filed them down and I used the boron nitrate. And I actually used boron nitrate before because I did fuse glass before. I made these little cabochons out of fused glass with the boron nitrate, which is basically like PAM, but for glass stuff, so it doesn't stick. Anyway, so I did that, and so then you don't end up with as many trivet marks. However, sometimes you do end up with trivet marks, and then you have to use what's called an alundum stone to grind those down. And let me show you what those look like real quick. Never mind. I moved them. Oh, here they are. I moved them to a safe space, and then so I wouldn't step on them, and then I couldn't find them. But they look like this, and they're basically like an emery board that you then file away. But you have to do it underwater, and we don't have running water here, so that's why I haven't taken them out yet, because I'm going to take those home and do them under the water there. I guess in theory, you could try to mechanize it where you use like a Dremel or something. The thing is that you can take away metal or glass really fast with the aluminum stone. There's also a fiberglass brush that you can use that can take down sharp spots. But you just have to be careful because you can take away too much and then you can eat into the metal and all kinds of stuff. She said like a Dremel. I have a Fordham, and like I said, you could use that in theory. However, it's very possible that you can damage your piece. Sometimes you have to. and this sounds crazy, but sometimes you have to damage your piece in order to fix it. But then you put it back in the kiln, and the kiln will heal the cracks. But say, for example, like when you make these pieces, I punch the hole out, but because it's glass that I'm layering it on, sometimes what happens is that glass, it's kind of like if you've ever blown bubbles, and that the surface tension of the bubble solution kind of creates that meniscus across that void, and then you blow and it makes a bubble. So that's what kind of happens sometimes when you put enamel, because the enamel, when it gets hot enough, it turns into liquid glass basically. So if you don't clear your holes beforehand, so you have to take this very fancy high-tech tool, aka a little piece of wire, and clean your holes out, and then that way they don't fill. But if they do fill, the only way to really fix that is to go in with a diamond burr and drill the glass out, because that's the only way to like get that clear of the hole. So sometimes you have to use a Fordham. I like to use a Fordham because whenever you're working with glass, it's good to have it underwater. And if you have a Dremel, the Dremel is the motor is in the handpiece, and what ends up happening sometimes is you get electrocuted. So don't get electrocution time. I mean, some people are super careful and, you know, they don't get electrocuted, but my feeling is like, there's always that one time when you get tired or whatever, and then you get careless, and then all of a sudden you get shocked and it's a new reality. So with a Fordham, or a flex shaft or whatever, the motor is separate, and there's a flexible shaft that's several feet long, and the motor is not in that, and there's nothing electrical in that part. So you can submerge that in water and do all kinds of stuff and grind things down, and you won't risk getting electrocuted. So there you go. So if you have to use it, use a Fordham or flex shaft so you don't have the trouble times. And I think nowadays you can buy an attachment that hooks onto a Dremel. I just don't do it. The other reason why that I like a flex shaft better than a Dremel is there's variable speeds that you can control with a foot pedal, kind of like driving. So if you need to do like start something real slow, you just ease it and nudge it just barely gently with your foot, and it will get the bit going slowly. And you can increase the speed, where you can start off fast and do stuff like that. But with a Dremel, there's like 2 or 3 speeds, I think, maybe, and you have to flick it, and it's not always the most convenient. So that's another perk for the flex shaft. Melanie says Candy uses a little Dawn soap with water and a toothbrush to clean the pieces. Yeah, so that works to get the oils off. So Dawn is dish detergent is what they use to take the oil off the animals when there's an oil spill. So that works really well. There's also this product that's called surfactant, which is basically the same thing. And you get a toothbrush and you clean it. And there's also this product is called Enamel. It's developed by Pam East, who is an enamelist. And that also cleans the metal and gets it ready for enameling. There is also a product that I like that's called Penny Bright. Penny Bright is used originally to clean like copper pots and stuff, and to remove tarnish and patina and different things like that, and oxidized corrosion. It's basically salt and lemon juice in a paste. So in theory, you can eat it. I wouldn't recommend it. I would highly, strongly suggest not to do it. However, you could. So it is a natural kind of, and what I mean by natural is it won't kill you right away if you eat it. But if you eat too much of anything, it could kill you. So,
Like Andrew Thornton.
I know, too much water. Who would think that if you drink too much water? If you heard William, he was like Andrew Thornton, the other Andrew Thornton, the one that killed himself by drinking too much water. He was in some kind of radio competition or something where there was like this, people were drinking water to see who could drink the most water. I don't know, like that just sounds like you'd be like peeing forever, but I guess he didn't, and then his cells got drowned out or something. I don't know, but anyway, so there's a lot of different things that you can do to prep the metal so that it accepts the enamel better, and I sometimes when you're prepping the metal, if you can use a pickle. However, what we're discovering now is that you can't really mix the enamel with the pickle. And what I mean by that is we haven't had any problems by pickling the metal before and cleaning it off. However, if we put the enamel on and then pickle like the other side, we've noticed that it starts eating away at the surface. So I don't know if it's because the pickle is reacting to the metals that are pigmenting the glass, or if there's some kind of chemical reaction. But there was one piece where it just was starting to kind of almost flake off of the surface. So we're not going to be doing that anymore. Melanie says, I saw people use a mesh screen on top of the trivet. Do you use one? I think it helped to keep the piece stay steady. Yeah, so for trivets, William, can you bring up
Another trivet?
the little ones? And then the wire mesh. So there are different types of trivets. This is if you're going to do a lot of pieces all at once. And
Like we were.
yeah, because guess what? I need to make money. So that's called production work. If I did them one at a time like this, basically I'd be in the grave before I ever made a penny off of this business. I probably shouldn't say that, but whatever. So there's a couple different types of trivets. This is one of the most common trivets. And I use this a couple times, but really I don't use it that much. One reason why it's good and it's stable is because the fork that you use to retrieve the pieces from the kiln fits perfectly underneath this, and it picks it up no problem. You don't have any wobbling. If you have something like this, which is also not used very much, you do have to use a mesh, and that comes into play with this. And so your spatula or your enameling fork will fit underneath here and pick it up like this, and you'll be able to move this, and it's stable-ish. These are titanium that I then coated with the boron nitrate, and those work really well. It doesn't stick, it doesn't overheat. So far, so good. So it is important. Some people, they'll use this, but then they have to use like tweezers, and I'm like, that's how you get burned. For one, it's not super secure. Basically, when you're thinking about points of connection, if you have one point of connection and it's not like rock solid, basically it's a pivot. And a pivot is where there's movement. And you don't want there to be movement when you're trying to mess around with this business. So it's important that you have something that there's at least 2 points of connection so that it doesn't fall over and stays balanced. And if it stays balanced, then the powder doesn't fall all off. Now, sometimes you have a piece that is a Wonka doodle shape and it's not going to want to fit in a trivet. And you can try to balance it and you can try to do that. I made a bunch of these little birds that I cut out and they did not want to fit in the trivet. The thing that I use to do that is using a corrugated trivet. A corrugated trivet looks like this, which it basically looks like a tin roof. But it's steel that you can put kind of odd shaped pieces. Now, some people, they have different like fiber blankets that they will put their pieces on. I don't know. I feel kind of nervous about that. And the reason why I feel nervous about that is because in the blacksmithing community, you can buy forges that are basically like a tin can that are stuffed with this fiberglass that doesn't burn. However, there are some people who have had lung issues because the heat from the inside of the forge was burning this fiberglass material or whatever it is, basically like asbestos, and it was becoming airborne, and people were breathing that in. So I've seen people use these different little blankets, and they look really convenient, and they don't stick, and there's all this other stuff. However, I've seen people get really, really bad problems with their lungs. So I'm gonna wait it out and see if anybody else gets the lung problems from those little handy dandy pads. And if they do, then I'm not going to use them. If they don't, then I might consider using them. But if it's not broken, then, like these are working well enough now. So I'll just keep using them until I can't. And I already have them. So Lee says, I'm sorry I meant using Dremel low grade sanding wheel for the metal pieces you have stamped. To sand the edges, you can try, there are buffing wheels and different things like that, like polishing wheels, that you can do. And in theory, I could do that, but mostly it's all done by hand. So that's one of the things that it's kind of time consuming and nobody likes doing it, but that's just part of the process, I guess. But I guess that's one of those things that I could look into. There's all different ways of shaping metal using, different belt sanders. I don't have a belt sander, or maybe I do. I might have a belt sander that I can use. But apparently I don't use enough to even know if I have it or not. So that's probably why I don't use that. So for if you're torching it, you do need the mesh, and that's so that your piece doesn't fall over, and so that you don't have a heat sink. If you have a solid piece of metal like this and you try to torch it, if you angle it like underneath, like if you had this like delicately uh, perched like so, and you got your torch underneath and you torched it, that would be fine. But if you try to torch it underneath this metal, this plate, it would create a heat sink and your metal wouldn't get hot enough so that the glass would fuse to the surface of the metal. So if you have a mesh like this, what ends up happening is that the torch flame can get through there. There is a little bit of a heat sink, but it's kind of minimal in comparison. And I'm kind of actually interested, and I don't know if somebody's already developed this, but making a mesh that's super strong that is made out of compressed charcoal. And one of the reasons why is and this is something that I kind of learned recently, is that the charcoal blocks, which I was kind of opposed to using because they're really dirty and kind of messy, is they create an oxygen-free environment, which when you're working with metals like copper is super important because you don't want to have too much oxygen because the oxygen and the heat causes oxidation. And if you have oxidation, the glass is not going to stick to the oxidation. So that's why you have to kind of clean those surfaces. So in theory, if there was a mesh type product that allowed the heat to come through, that was made of that highly compressed charcoal, it could be like really cool. But the only problem is that the compressed charcoal is kind of fragile. So you're already taking something that's already fragile and then making it even more fragile by perforating it with holes. So maybe that's like the most dumbest idea ever. However, it could be the next, like the most brilliant thing. And I just told the whole internet, and now I'm not going to be a millionaire off of these compressed charcoal enameling stations that 4 people will buy. So I see a couple people have to go. Yeah, this has been a lot of time. And I kind of like to pack people's brains full of information. For me, I go into research mode when it's like my coping mechanism. So if I'm stressed out at all, I start researching projects. And so for me, I like to understand things and the way they work and kind of how I can make them work better, and also how I can make things work more affordably. Because a lot of times, especially in the jewelry industry, they'll make products that are really cool and really amazing, but sometimes they're super cost prohibitive because there's kind of like a proprietary kind of formula. However, a lot of times there are workarounds for different things. So you can have different materials and use a variety of those materials to create things and get similar effects, but do it at a fraction of the cost. So I kind of like to do that too. I grew up from kind of a waste not, want not mentality. My grandparents were children of the Depression. My grandma was born in 1920 and lived through the Great Depression. So they were super thrifty. And we grew up poor. So we always had to kind of make our own stuff and invent our own kind of enjoyments, because we didn't really have those store bought kind of entertainments at our fingertips all the time. So, so I think it's a good thing for me to do, to like problem solve things and try to think through different applications and figure out new ways of doing things and stuff like that. So, anyways, Marianne says you had a belt sander when you were doing the walls. Yeah, that's a different kind of belt sander, and I would probably go blind if I try to use that. But maybe if I like rigged up some kind of stand. But there are these belt sanders that they use for knife making. If you've ever watched Forged in Fire, you can see those belt sanders. Those belt sanders run around $2,000 though, so that's why I don't have one. And William's like, and probably won't for a long time, unless I win the lotto, and then I'll have 4, and I won't have to change belts. I'll have my helper Enrique change the belts for me, Enrique and Dolores. All right. I think I've bored y'all to tears. The numbers are dropping significantly.
Demonstrations.
I talked for like 3 hours, dude. That's good enough. I was gonna show how to do like some drawing on enameling and painting on enamel and stuff, but then we'd be here for another 3 hours, and then y'all be like, "Here he goes." No wonder why Facebook done shut him up. He, here comes Sir Talk a lot. All right, I'm gonna flip this around if I can figure out how to do it, and then I'm gonna say goodbye, and then I'm going to actually make some stuff. And people are like, how come you don't demonstrate? Because I'm sitting in my chair, yo. Maybe next time. I actually was planning on doing, I had all the stuff lined up. Like, this is what I was going to work on, which doesn't fit any of the trivets. So that should be fun. Well, that fits that one. But I was going to work on this one, this beautiful piece of copper. But we'll I guess you have to watch the reels if I take pictures of it. It depends if I get my Facebook account back or not, because if I don't get my Facebook back, then maybe I'm going to go on the TikTok and then jump ship and dance some crazy dances and do them challenges that I'm not coordinated enough to do. So maybe that's the push I needed to join the TikTok. Y'all gonna be learning jewelry in under 10 seconds or however long those little things are. Somebody's like, I do have some shows I want to watch. Well, me too. All right. All right. When William says that that it's a pain in the behind to change the camera from the front to the back, he's not kidding. You have to go through this step and then go through that step. And I don't know where the camera is, and this is too tall, and I'm too short. There you go. So you see the full face. And then the way the light is coming across, it looks like I got punched on the bottom. All right, whatever. Y'all don't need to see my face anyways. Facebook doesn't like it. All right, here you go. I made that. That's okay. I don't know where the camera is. So anyways, so over the course of this video, I showed you some of the samples that we did and some of the experiments that we did with enamel. I kind of talked about painting on enamel using opalescent pieces of glass on enamel, how to prep enamel surfaces, how to keep enamel surfaces clean, what trivets to use, how to minimize the trivet marks by using boron nitrate, filing, sanding, and using chalk as a resist. We talked about the hydraulic press. We talked about cleaning the metal with surfactants. We talked about the different Very Perry colors. We talked about low fire or low fusing clear transparent enamel and how that didn't work excellent for the application. We also talked about removing. Apparently that aluminum stone is pretty sturdy. We talked about removing trivet marks and excess glass with an aluminum stone. And I'm sure we talked about other stuff. I vented for the first 35 minutes, expressing my ire with Facebook by them banning me from doing lives. So if you didn't get to enjoy that, you can definitely tune in and watch the replay on that. I'm sure that's super exciting and so riveting to see me complain. And then what else did we talk about? We talked about this stuff, the overlays. I'm like, where's the thing? And and one thing I should mention when you're using this overglaze is mix it, mix it, mix it, mix it, mix it, mix it, mix it. Because if you don't, then you're basically painting, it separates out and you're basically painting with a binder and you're not actually painting with a pigment. And then it's important to let it completely dry, like so. Maybe I'll have William do this one. Well, watch the reels. Go stick this in the kiln. And then please, 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 my darling.
Your bird.
That sounded really not like nice. I'm like, go do this. But he's used to it. Long suffering William. And so
they're learning.
The truth's
coming out.
Yeah, people think I'm nice. I never said I was nice. You'll think I'm nice. I'm not nice. I may be kind and like generous in my mind. At least I think I'm generous, but I'm not nice. So in case anybody's wondering about that, I see this. Diane says, great. Thanks for the great info. I love your enamel direction. Can't wait to buy some. Yeah, I can't wait to make some to sell. And Marion said, so much information. Love it. Yeah, so we packed a lot in, and
so do people think we should sell them like that, or are you decorating?
Nah, they all said they like them speckles. Why we got to? So William's gonna put them on the internet.
I'm gonna take them now and start taking pictures.
While I'm still talking, I'm like, I gotta hang up the phone, and then
he does this anytime we're leaving someone's house too.
Correct. That's the Filipino way. You make it like so far, then you turn back, and then you say,
what do they call
and
the way
then,
I do it?
Huh?
Is it an Irish exit or what do they call
Irish exit? I've never heard it. I used to think we were Irish from our youth time. There was this family story about how we were descendants from the Irish immigrants that fled the potato famine.
Irish exit, is that what they call it?
But then you know what? That wasn't real. They were from a place called Duplin County in Virginia or North Carolina, in North Carolina. And so totally not Irish. It's like everything but Irish, mostly English. So sorry.
Oh, the Irish exit, yeah.
William says it is the Irish exit.
When you leave, the Irish goodbye, when you leave without saying goodbye to anybody, you just go.
Oh, I don't do that.
I know I do.
He does that. You'd be at a dinner party and you're like, I thought you went to the bathroom.
William's gone.
And then his grandpa used to do that too. And I was like, dude just left. He didn't even he got up and just walked away.
Yep.
I'm like, bye. See you.
Don't need to say bye.
Yeah, I guess that's good. But me, I'm like, okay, bye. And the way that how you say,
Andrew has like 30 byes.
I know, the way you really say that you're going to say you got to go, say, I got to go to the bathroom. I learned this from my mom.
That's for sure he's leaving.
That's the way that's how you, Cynthia does this.
To your mom.
Yeah, my mom says it to me. I say it to her. Cynthia says it. I don't know if Sheila says it. I'm sure she does too. But you say, I got to go to the bathroom. That means you're done.
The phone call ends or the visit ends.
You can't take the phone in the bathroom. Nobody wants to hear that. So that's it. So I got to go to the bathroom. I actually kind of do. So bye. If I can figure out how to turn this off. Shoot.
Just hit leave. Yeah, there you go.